Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Katie, a member of the CK12 team, and my colleague Laramie and I will be running today's webinar, Groups and Practice 101. We're so glad you joined us. Before I introduce you to CK12, I'd like to do a quick reminder about Zoom. Right now, you should see two different options on your Zoom screen, one for Q&A and one for chat. If you have a question you want about CK12 and you want us to answer that, or even just the program or Zoom, please post it in the Q&A window. The chat window can get a great community conversation going, and it looks like that's already happening, so please continue to do so. But it's hard for us to track questions in there, so please make sure they go in Q&A if you want us to make sure to answer them during this. If you are trying to have a community conversation, please choose the all panelists and attendees, not just all panelists. Otherwise, only we get to hear your story and your experience and not everyone else. So just change that to that all panelists and attendees, and you should be good to go. And then if you have any technical issues, trouble with video, sound, let us know, and we will try to address those. So thanks. Now, as most of you know, this webinar is part of our summer CK12 Certified Educator program. So what are the requirements and what does it mean? You can become CK12 certified by completing 7 sessions this summer, including our intro session. And if you miss that, you are going to want to check that recording for that particular one, because that was last held yesterday, actually. And then the other kind of piece of this is this joining a community of educators. And we made some training recommendations and pathway options, such as the intelligent pathway that this is part of. But really, you can mix and match and make your summer and your program what you want it to be. So if you are just joining us for this and you haven't signed up for a full pathway, or you want to join for any other particular sessions that are still upcoming, you can always check out our registration page and then choose the individual webinars option as you look there to register for future webinars. So if you have questions about the Certified Educator program, please feel free to type them in the Q&A window. And our team, including Star and Lindsay, will help answer those questions. And right now, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Laramie, to get you started with today's content.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome from Colorado. It's very overcast and cool out today, which is nice because it's been melting hot lately. I am glad to be with you today. I'm going to talk about 3 major things. We're going to first discuss the CK12 Adaptive Practice System, which is an intelligence system, meaning that it tracks the progress that a student makes through a given concept and encourages either more difficult or perhaps less challenging questions to make sure that they get a good picture of the overall concept. There are 150,000 questions in our system, so there's always a lot of variety for each individual concept that a student is studying. The second thing we're going to talk about is CK12's class and study groups. We have 2 sort of different flavors of groups in our system. One that is designed specifically for teachers hosting a class and kind of gives the teacher more control, and another one that's designed as a study group and allows or encourages more communication and collaboration between students. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is our assignments and student progress options. Anywhere in our site, a teacher can assign a portion of our content to a specific group of students in a class. And once that's been done, then as a teacher, you can get a quick overview or even a deep dive into the progress that a student makes on any one of those assignments. So hopefully by the time we're all done today, you'll all be experts on this. And if not, then it's my fault and you can blame me. And I'll talk to you more in a little bit. Katie?
So thanks, Laramie. Before we get into the core content, it would be great if we found out a little bit more about you. You'll see a poll here in a few seconds that will ask about your current knowledge of CK12's adaptive practice. So it's basically asking if you're new to this, if you've used practice occasionally, or if you've used practice frequently. And that will just kind of help us gear as we demo what this looks like, kind of where you stand so far and what's happening. So it looks like we've got a bunch of you answering that already. We'll give you another little bit to kind of get in those answers. So just kind of pick whichever one best fits your piece. We're getting there. We'll give you a few more seconds to kind of add that part in. And that probably gives us a decent idea of how things are going. So let's share what that looks like with you guys. And you can see that most of you are new to our adaptive practice system, and some of you, have started to use it, and even a couple have used it more frequently, which is totally what I would expect for people joining us for our intro to kind of groups and practice session. So I think that matches what we were assuming for our audience. And if you missed it and it was stuck, this is just kind of to get an idea of what the general feel is for the people joining us today. So no worries at all. I think with that, we're going to turn it back over to Laramie, and he's going to talk about what he's covering in today's session.
There we go. Okay, so today, in a little bit more specific, like I said, we kind of covered 3 major topics today, but a little more specifically, we're going to start by learning how to find appropriate practice for various concepts. So if your student is studying a specific topic, you'll be able to find right away where to give them the practice questions for that. We're going to talk about how to assign practice, how to assign reads, interactives, and other modalities to any class that you've set up. We're going to learn how to make an educated decision regarding the best use of study and class groups. Like I said, there's a little bit of differences between the focus of each of those options, so you'll want to kind of know ahead of time which one you want to set a new group up as. I'm going to show you how to actually set up a new study or class group, which is actually incredibly simple. And then we're going to try making a couple of practice assignments, and I'll show you where you can find per question feedback for each of the assignments that you've made. And then finally, we'll get an idea of how to do sort of an overview of your class so that you can just glance at an assignment that you've sent out and see whether a lot of the students or just a couple of the students have actually completed it at a given point.
Okay, and so just to give you guys an idea, this is Groups and Practice 101, and this is what we're covering in today's session. And in our customizing practice session that we'll be hosting later, we're going to cover a couple different pieces. So we're going to talk more about kind of customizing practice into quizzes, the settings for that, adding extra concepts or reordering questions, or even writing your own questions, and then using the math editor to do that, as well as kind of multi-concept assignments. So pulling assignments together that have different concepts mixed into the same assignment, as well as including quizzes in that, and then what that looks like within your report system for that. So just know that at this point in time, this is your introductory one. And so what we'll do is we'll focus on questions and the basics at this point in time. We will stay on, as always, to cover kind of any extra specific questions you might have, but we really want to focus on kind of the basics for groups in practice today, and then go more into those in-depth and advanced concepts when we do customizing practice later this week. We're also going to cover a learning management system one. I think that is next Monday. So if you have questions about how this all shows up in Google Classroom or in Edmodo or Canvas or Schoology or something like that, kind of remember that we're doing a whole session just on that piece. So now that we've kind of split those into 2 groups and you understand those pieces, let's talk about adaptive practice. So what is our adaptive practice? Our adaptive practice is a digital tool, and it's designed to meet students at their current level of understanding and help them master the next step for any concept. So our system will bump students up to available harder questions if they're successfully answering, or it will make recommendations, such as text to read, a video to watch, or an interactive to work with, if students find the current level too challenging. So why we recommend that you use it? As Laramie said earlier, there are over 150,000 questions with a variety of question types. Plus, when students submit their work, you as their teacher can see info such as the time they spent, their streak, and the level of questions for anything that you've assigned to them. Note that because our adaptive practice system meets students where they are, a student who is struggling may hit the goal of 10 correct with all easy questions, and a student who is more advanced would have more of a mix of levels as they're working. So for teachers, this ensures that each student is progressively and appropriately challenged while maintaining a clear record of each student's level of understanding. And so now the question is where you can find it. So in addition to kind of the website, we have a free CK12 app that's available for all tablets and smartphones. And this provides students the ability to practice at their own pace on any electronic device, whether they're in school, at home, on the bus, or on the way to a game. So I think with that, we're going to have Laramie come back on and switch over and get into adaptive practice and show you what that looks like.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully you can see my perhaps not entirely lovely face. It's taken early in the morning. Let's go back to the home page here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is where to find practice on our website as a student. What you're seeing now is the CK12 homepage. If you just type ck12.org, hit the enter button, this should be the first thing you see. Now, I am signed in as a teacher currently, so there may be a couple of different things depending on whether you're signed in as a student or as a teacher. The biggest difference will be this little window right in the middle that talks about finding a standards aligned flexbook. A student doesn't get that banner. Otherwise, everything else is the same. So as any kind of learner, whether you're a student or an older learner, if you go down to My Subjects down on the bottom area here and pick any topic, I'm going to go through elementary here. And we'll go grade 4, telling the time, pick any concept. In this case, we're going to talk about looking at the clock and telling the time. Almost every single one of CK12's, give or take 5,000 concepts, has a practice modality assigned to it. And you'll see this little card of the 3 that are available for this particular concept. There's the practice card down here, and it's usually the last card in the list. This is the easiest way to find practice for a specific concept. So if I click on that, this is telling me that the system expects it's going to take about 3 minutes to complete. Now that's based on the number of questions that are available, the number of questions expected to get correct, and then also the amount of time that the average student has taken to complete it. And my understanding, I'm not sure whether it currently takes into account my past practice, but the long-term results are expected to take that into account as well. So if I want to assign this as a teacher, by the way, I can just click here on the Assign to Class button. We're going to come back to that a little later, but you can see it's very easy once you find a practice to assign it to a given class so that your students can see it. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these questions here. As a teacher, it says preview. As a student, it'll just give you a start button there. First question comes up. It asks me what time is shown on the clock. In this case, it looks to me like it's about 3:30. So we'll go ahead and choose that button. I get a nice little motivational banner here, and you'll see in the top right-hand corner is my progress meter. It works kind of like a streak meter. Basically says that so far I'm doing very well. I have to get 9 correct. Right now I have 1 out of those 9. Usually it requires 10 correct. Some concepts have fewer questions than others. This one only has 9 questions available, so the system expects you to get them all correct before you move on. Now, if I have any trouble with the question, let's go on and take a look at the next one here. And we're going to say I think it's about 3:15. If I have trouble with a question, that banner comes down as red instead of green. I have an opportunity to look at the solution. Now, the solutions are currently only available in the elementary questions, although we are about 3/4 of the way done building full solutions for all of the geometry, and our long-term goal is to have them available for all of the high school questions as well. And regardless, the solution here will walk through what should have been answered and why it should have been answered, and then the student can move on with the next button. Now also, if I look at a question, I'm not entirely certain what it might be, but I think I can probably get it right. I have the option to get a hint down here at the bottom that does not affect a student's score. The hints are not designed ever to walk a student through answering the question. They're designed to sort of guide the student in the right direction. That way, hopefully, they're going to learn the material better in the long run without feeling like they're entirely stumped and don't have any idea what to do. So look down here. In this case, again, most of the elementary questions have video hints. That's what we're seeing here. Some of the high school questions do also. Most of the high school questions will start off with a written hint. And finally, if I want to practice working on something a little bit, I can draw a little sketch. And, a good artist like me can really benefit from that, as you can see. But the scratch pad is there, particularly helpful for equation evaluation and so forth. Now, let's go on and answer a couple more questions here. If I continue to get a number of questions right in a row, the system will start giving me harder questions. It defaults to our average difficulty, but then it'll advance into harder questions as the student shows particularly good performance. If a student continues to have real trouble answering a question, then let's see if I can get there. It's going to evaluate my situation. Oops, Dan. I hate it when I accidentally get something right. Do a couple more here. It's 1:45, yeah. There we go. Now the system's saying, okay, wait a minute, you've gotten a number of them incorrect here. We're going to recommend that you brush up a little bit on this concept before you move on. And it'll provide a couple of suggestions for the student to review in order to improve their performance as it moves on. Okay, and I'm just going to say, go back to practice here. Now, once I get to the point where I've either finished the ones I'm going to do completely because I've filled the progress bar, or I think I've done enough for one day, I can submit it. And I'll immediately, as a student, get a feel for the questions that I answered. I had 3 medium questions out of the total. The ones I got right are in green, the ones I got wrong are in red, and the correct answers are highlighted so that I can see what I should have answered. So it's very much built to support learning on behalf of the students. Okay, so let's take a look at another way to find CK12 practice rather than going specifically through the modality like I did. I'm going to go back to the home page. If I, actually there's a button, I'm going to do it from right here. So from the home page, under Explore, you'll see there's a button that says Adaptive Practice right here. There's 2 ways to reach this page. One is by clicking on this button. In theory, yes, there we go. The other way to do it is to just type ck12.org/practice up in the URL bar. But once we've picked the adaptive practice screen, we're going to choose a topic. In this case, let's do arithmetic. Now these are all of our arithmetic branch topics over here on the left, our major topics. And underneath each major topic, we get down into a little bit more zoomed in individual concepts for that topic. Clear on the right-hand side, you'll see these little percent meters. Oops. These little percent progress meters. These are all things that I've addressed before, either in other demos, or because I felt like I really needed to review whole number multiplication, and it looks like I probably should again. But these little progress meters show a student how far along with a given modality they are, a given concept they are. So kind of nice, just quick review to see which things I've addressed and which things I haven't. So let's do, I don't know, estimation of multiplication and division. Now right away, this one says I've already completed this one. I've actually gone way over and above. I've got 19 correct. I had 8 in a row that were correct, and I worked on it for 13 minutes. If I feel like I am not happy with that performance, I can see right away there's some examples of things that I should probably review before I get into the questions so that I can encourage a good response. And down here underneath each of those, we see what the system has discovered makes a difference for individual students. Most students get a 71% or higher if they've done the read. Most get 68% or higher if they get the video, and so forth. So it kind of encourages the students to pick one modality or another in order to improve their response. And then I think that's about it as far as that goes. Let's see, one more. Oh, I also wanted to show by typing in the practice directly from the home page. So let's go there real quick. So if I just sign into any web browser, brand new homepage, I can type ck12.org/practice, and it'll take me to a page where I can just click on View All Practice and see that same sort of browse page, everything from science to English, math, elementary, which covers obviously math and science. And I think that's about it. Katie, I'm going to hand it back over to you, and we'll see if we have any good questions to address here.
Thanks, Laramie. Maybe you can click on one of the science topics just so we can show that there is practice for science as well. And if you pick a topic, we had a question about downloading worksheets. So kind of any of those topics, if you show us where that is, that might be super helpful just so they can kind of see that option there.
So yeah, anytime you click on any specific concept there, you'll see in the top right-hand corner. Now this is as a teacher. Sign in as a teacher, I get a customized view here. Let me sign in as a student really quick. Adaptive practice. I'm going to show what happens if we sign up as a brand new student. Here we go, sign up here. So I'm using email. Oops. Bob Tester student. That's my real name. Nobody knows that. I just go by Laramie. But Bob
Laramie,
Tester
I'm just going to have you switch screens so they can see the one that you're now working on.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much, Katie. It's a good thing she's here. There we go. Let's see if that's a little more effective for you. All I've done so far is just click on join. And that is my real address. You can get a hold of me that way. Okay, so then if I go to adaptive practice, click on any topic. Oh, it still thinks I'm a teacher. Didn't go through the full setup. Anyway, regardless, the student does not see the customize option. As a teacher, you can customize the questions and download the worksheet so that you can print these things out and then give to your student in hand so that they don't have to have internet access to get into them right away.
Thanks, Laramie. We also had a question about the scratch pad, and this has come up before. So can you just talk about kind of what that's used for? Is there any record of it? How that works a little bit?
Certainly. I have a number of students that use the scratch pad when they're trying to work out basic equations in math. And although I am a gimpy old geezer and I have a heck of a time drawing on this, I have a number of students that found it very useful and were actually pretty good at drawing with their touchpad, so they were able to work out full equations on here. Now, there is not a record of what goes on here, although I did have, I had two students a couple of years ago in my algebra class that were, I wanted them to show their work as they were answering these questions. They used their screenshot capability. So they would draw out their series of steps here on the touchpad, take a screenshot of it, and then when they were done with the practice, they'd just send me an email with all the screenshots showing the work they did on their practice along the way.
I'm just going to have you switch back to that screen so they can actually see that touchpad.
Oh
and we'll
Let's
go
try that
from
again.
there.
There we go.
And hopefully you can see the
scratch pad. There we go.
There you go.
There we go. And like I said, still an old man, still an old geezer, and still not drawing any better than I did on the other screen. But as you can see, it's pretty easy to then get a white background that they can take a snapshot of. And it's particularly with a Mac or using the window snipping tool, they can take screenshots and send them to you as a teacher.
Thanks. I think I'll take a couple of these questions that are coming in, and then I will probably move forward from there. So if you can just go back to the homepage while I'm doing that and pull up kind of where the tools and apps option is, that would be awesome. But we have questions in terms of, is there practice for English language arts lessons for high school? The only English practice we currently have that we have built is for spelling. And so you'll see spelling options there, which is really kind of practice with spelling concepts, not necessarily like a learning and spelling program. So just know that at this point in time, we haven't built it, but you can always build your own questions and make your own quizzes that include that. So if you're interested in doing that, then I would definitely join us for customizing practice tomorrow. So hopefully that gives you an idea. And then the customizing piece that kind of goes into there is the idea of I can build my own questions. I can mix and match and choose order. I can pick and choose the pieces that you have. So all sorts of options to kind of adjust it. Our adaptive practice system really serves up questions based on how students are doing, and then the customizing option allows you as a teacher to pick specific questions that you want students to address or to write your own. So if you can't attend that one tomorrow, you can actually find the video of the previous version of that already on our program page. So check that out, and we'll show you more of that kind of as we do all our wrap-up details today. So please keep the questions coming. I think at this point in time, I'm going to steal the screen back and go back into an overview of our next section, and then we'll continue to answer questions as we go through. So the next piece of this has to do with CK12 groups. So what is a CK12 group? So the first thing you should know is that CK12 groups allow you to share resources and have group discussions. And both study groups and class groups will allow different people to kind of do that. Everyone can have that group discussion if the owner of the group turns it on. Everyone can share resources in a study group that's really kind of for students to work together or colleagues to work together. But then the CK12 class groups are the ones that allow for you to make assignments for students and see their reports. So if you create a study group and then you want to kind of start making assignments, you will need to create a class group that's in conjunction with that so that you can actually, or separately, kind of however you want to assign different students to that or the same students. But definitely make sure you're working with class groups if you want to see those reports. Now, as I was saying, it allows kind of students to learn from each other if they're in a study group, and then you can track their progress, you can share resources. That's a great way to kind of post discussions. Think of it kind of as a simple way to learn or to track student progress. It's not kind of a full learning management system at this point in time, but it does give you a lot of the same options as you work your way through. And then where can you get it? So the groups exist on our CK12 page. If you're using a learning management system, it would exist within that piece, but our groups specifically are through your dashboard or the groups icon on your piece. So with that, we're going to have Laramie kind of show you and work his way through that group option.
Okay, let me grab the screen again here. I'm going to do my level best to grab it with the right account. There we go. Okay, so all I've done here so far is go to the CK12 website, the homepage. I signed in with a brand new account. All I did was just say I'm a teacher, and I put in an email address and then went back to the homepage. Now, as a teacher, if you're going to be working with students or you want your students to work together, those are both options that we really support using our group's capability. And there's two ways to access it. First of all, if I go to my own dashboard, which up here on the top left-hand corner you'll see, this is sort of the home page for my account. Just says who I am. I didn't put in any subjects, or it would say here what subjects I teach. But from this page, I can either see concepts that I may or may not be interested in working with my students on right away, or I can create a group to start assigning things. Now, the demo that comes up right away is sort of a blank class, my first class, that's set up based on the fact that I'm a teacher. I told the system I was. So it's going to give me a demonstration class. We're going to start a new one, just so you can see the process. And since there are no other ones in here, it's going to give me a good walkthrough to sort of show me what I'm doing as I'm building that. So I'm going to click the plus button. I'm going to create a group. I'm going to call it sample. And then my first big choice here, my first big decision to make is whether I want it to be a class or I want it to be a study group. Now, as I mentioned before, there are some differences between these. If I choose a class, then the system is set up such that I am in charge of the resources and the settings for that particular group of people. I can turn on and turn off chat messages. I can make assignments for individual students. I can set due dates. I can share resources, suggestions for things for students to review before they try and take quizzes or to go to adaptive practice for a given topic. If I instead choose to set up a study group, the study group is more of a round table. There isn't a specific single moderator. There's not a specific setting to turn on or turn off. I'm sorry, the question and answer is enabled by default. It's not something that one person has control over, so that it encourages chat among the people in the group. So let's just choose a topic here. I'm a math teacher. I generally teach high school. I'm just going to choose grade 5 today. And then I'm going to create my group. Now, here is a study group. I can send messages to individual people in the group that I want to add. There's a couple of ways to add new people. I can give them a code so that all they have to do is click join in their own groups section, or I can add students by email if I'm a teacher and I've created an actual class. So I have one sample group here. I'm going to add a class right away. Create a group, class, sample class, just so you can see the difference. There we go. Now, from the home page or from my list of groups here, you'll see that the only difference is where it says class or study. But if I go into that sample class, over here under settings, I have the option to enable question and answer, enable anonymous posting, allow everybody to get a message whenever there's a new resource or a new member, and there's that group code that I can share with someone, or I can copy a link and send it to students by their cell phone chat messaging service so that they can log in directly from their cell phones. All the overall resources as a teacher. If instead I were to go to that class or that group that I created instead of the class, let's take a look at that real quick. Here's the sample study group. Now here under settings, everybody has access to the same thing. They can either turn on and turn off their own question answer, but they can't turn off the ability to question or answer. And then many of the other settings have been disabled. So now let's take a look real quick at some of the commonalities. Both options have the ability to share resources, but in the shared resources section here, you can only give things in a group, like a study group, you can only share things that you see. In a class, you can share things that the entire class has access to. And I think that's all the differences between them. Yeah, so in general, as an overall view, there are two options. One is a class where the students are guided by the teacher. The teacher can create assignments that we're going to talk about in the next section here and view reports. In a study group, it's made as a round table so that the students all work together and can share resources with each other. I think that's all I have here, Katie.
Okay, thanks, Laramie. We had a couple of questions that came in that I just want to cover. One was a question on limit on the number of students in a class or group. And so that's something where there's not kind of an official limit from our end, but most teachers that we talk to find it easier to do classes or groups by period or by kind of the smaller chunk that they're working with. When you assign stuff to a class, you assign it to the entire class. So if your second period class gets ahead of your first period class, you're going to want to make sure that those are separate class groups. You could always create kind of one general study group if you wanted them all together. But definitely for reports, it's a lot easier to kind of keep those as separate classes. And we kind of hope that that goes from there. So we had a request to kind of slow down. If there's something that we went through too fast, please let us know and we'll try to continue to show that. The basic gist, as you can see here on the left, is the idea of assignments, reports, Q&A, resources, kind of adding your members or looking who they are, and settings.
And I'm happy to go through those individually if we think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think at this point in time, you know, a lot of what we're trying to do this summer is expose you to what's available on CK12. And then we recommend that you create a sample class group. If you're doing the assignment for this particular webinar, then you'll get a chance to explore that and go from there. So definitely kind of see what we work with, and kind of the next step is for you to explore and then see what questions you have and go from there. Similarly, kind of, is there a limit to the amount of classes versus students? I have a number of test classes across my accounts because I demo all the time, and I have yet to max out that option. So I think you guys will be fine for your own classes, so I wouldn't worry about kind of that component. I would definitely recommend maybe making one big class group and then any kind of subgroups, not subgroups, but like separate groups with kind of subsections of your class as you're working your way through. So those are options. And then the other question that we missed kind of answering when we were talking about practice itself was, does the adaptive part still work if you start customizing? And that's something we'll talk about more in that customizing one, but the answer to that is no. Our adaptive system works kind of with our adaptive practice tool, and as soon as you start choosing which questions you want students to access, our system is not going to override your work. So don't worry about that piece kind of as you go through. Just know that if you want to pick and choose your questions, then you should pick and choose your questions. If you want the adaptive practice system to work, then you're going to want to leave the students in that kind of adaptive practice piece. So let's maybe answer one or two more questions as we go from here, and then we'll kind of keep moving forward and we'll come back to questions throughout this piece. There's the question of, would you feel a need to sometimes have a class and group for the same class of students? What would be the advantage of this? I can't really see a need to have a class group and a study group for the same group of students. It really, if you're creating it as a class and you want the assignment component to be available, then I would create it as a class group. If you aren't trying to make any assignments, then you can create a study group. You don't really need, all of the features that are available in a study group are also available in a class group. So that would probably be kind of your larger option to work off with. So hopefully that answered that question there. And we had some questions in terms of seeing student progress, and Laramie's going to go into that in a minute, but we've kind of adjusted that slightly, so hopefully that will answer your question, and if that doesn't answer it, then we'll come back to that some more as we go. So just kind of hold off on that, the assignment and report component, for one more minute. And then we had some general questions, kind of in terms of differentiating assignments for individuals. You do at this point in time need to set up groups with different groups if you want to assign different work. So that's currently how our system is set. We've had requests to kind of update that so you could differentiate within a group. If you guys were here for our intro session, we're a pretty small team, because we don't charge for anyone or to use any of our content. And so we have the ability to kind of make updates to our system based on priority levels and what users are asking for and what we're able to do and what makes the most sense based on our priorities. So continue to ask for these features, and based on those requests and what makes the most sense, we'll kind of address them as we go. But at this point in time, if you want to assign different content to different students, you do need to make a separate group for those students.
And I actually did that myself as a teacher, Katie. I had an Algebra 2 class and then an Algebra 2 Advanced. And even though they were all one class of students, I put the ones that I thought might need additional work also into the advanced class. So they showed up on the roster for both classes, and I could add additional assignments to the advanced class. And actually, that worked pretty well because it kept those additional sort of challenge assignments separate, and it made it easier to keep track of when the entire class had completed a primary assignment all at once.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Laramie, for that helpful information as we work forward. And then we had just kind of a program comment or question, which was setting up a sample class with us as students and let us do key parts of what you're showing, discussing. Our assignment asks you to work through that. So when you do the assignment for this particular webinar, we didn't want people who might be joining us on a phone to have to be able to see multiple screens all at the same time. But we do ask you to do the assignments based on these webinars just for that reason. We really want you guys to explore and try these out and see what questions you have. If you're struggling with those, we always have office hours. So definitely kind of work your way through, and hopefully you'll get to see some more of that and see how that works. So I think at this point in time, we're going to continue to move forward. We will continue to answer questions and go from there. But let's go back into this presentation to kind of transition to the last core component. And so as we move forward, I'm going to start by kind of spotlighting one of our teachers, Jessica Favea Casillas, who's a chemistry teacher at Austin High School in El Paso, Texas. And one of my colleagues got to go down and see her work in her classroom and see the different CK12 tools she used with students. And her students are accessing CK12 on laptops, tablets, and mobile phones. So let's see kind of what her experience is and have her share it with you.
I like to use CK12 groups to assign resources. It's completely accessible and versatile. And the fact that I can edit the textbook makes it a little more personal. So my students see that, oh, well, you know, Ms. Favela Casillas went ahead and edited it for us. Therefore, I should read it. I better read it. I've shared a resource. You have two shared resources here, okay? You're going to get the one that says types of reactions. Later on, you guys are going to answer a Q&A. By the end of the lesson, you'll be able to figure out what kind of reaction it is just by looking at it. I found that a lot of students relied on their phones, and sometimes I have, like right now, I have kids who were absent the day before, and I needed it to be easy for them to just go to whatever it is that I'm asking. So what I did was I created a poster with a QR code they could easily scan, and they had the codes that were particular to their group number, which was their period number. I divided them by class. I thought that was easier and way more efficient. I didn't have to waste time creating a login, and that group number just takes them straight to what they need. In all, it's a very positive movement, the fact that anybody can use these textbooks anywhere, really. If I tell them to read it before class, they will go and read it before class. There is no excuse for them not being able to learn. There's no excuse for them not being able to acquire any kind of information.
Thanks. So hopefully that gave you kind of one sample situation where a teacher was using that as they worked their way through. And so, she was talking about assignments and reports and what that looks like. So let's give you a quick overview and then have Laramie kind of show you what that looks like as well. So assignments. In addition to sharing resources, you can choose the CK12 class group tool to create single or multi-concept assignments and review student progress. So assignments are just that. They're something you want your students to complete. Once you assign it to your class, at this point in time, it's open and they can start working on it. If you don't want to assign it immediately or you want to choose to assign it later, you can create it and then wait to assign it. Then reports allow you to see their progress on any assignment. So we have students using CK12 for multiple classes and multiple subject areas. So it's not going to put all the work that they've done in your group. It will only show you in your reports the assignments that you have made for that student. So just keep that in mind as you're kind of creating assignments and expecting students to do work. So why you can use it. By creating assignments, it allows you to see how students are progressing. Assignments for other modalities, such as a text or video, tell you whether or not they've accessed that particular modality. If they've started playing around in the Sim sandbox or starting to answer questions in a Plix Interactive, you'll get to see that they've done that piece. And then for practice and quizzes, you'll actually see percentages, either based on the goal or based on the number of questions that you've put in there. So that gives you kind of a variety of different responses within a report based on the modality type that you assign to students. And then the last piece is that they can be created and accessed on CK12 through any class group. So students can access their assignments through the practice app as well, if it's practice, or actually other assignments as well. But if you're trying to create those assignments, you'd want to do it from kind of the modality page or within groups. And then all of your reports are accessed within that group. So I think we're going to turn it over to Laramie and let him show you what that looks like.
Cool. Thanks, Katie. All right, let me grab the screen here. I'm going to grab it, hopefully, again, with the correct screen. There we go. And you'd think I would recognize there's a bright green bar around the window I'm showing. Sometimes I'm quicker on the uptake than others. Okay, I'm going to show you how to assign a given modality to students in a class. Now, this is actually my teacher account. So I have a number of class groups already set up in here. And by the way, just for clarity, when we talk about groups, in general, groups covers the idea of classes and of study groups. If it's a class group, that's the one that the teacher leads, and the teacher sets assignments with due dates and so forth. If it's a study group, then that's the group that, is sort of the round table, students all working together. So let's take a look at some of our cool simulations here. Let's go to Physics Sims. If you haven't played with these Sims, I highly recommend it. They are just amazing. Where's my Phases of the Moon one? There's a Phases of the Moon one that's really cool. I suppose, oh, there it is. I was going to say, I suppose I could probably search for it, but there it is. You'll see here, it says under the little tab for Phases of the Moon, it talks about the concepts that it covers. If I click on Phases of the Moon, I can see right away up at the top there's an Assign to Class button. Now, as a student, I would obviously click the little play button here, have it tell me how the Plix works, show the actions to go through as far as getting into the questions and manipulating the tools. As a teacher, I've decided this is something I want to assign to my class. All I need to do is click that Assign to Class button. It comes up with a default title. I can say, please complete the activity, and then choose the specific courses I want to add it to. I'm going to choose my Algebra 2 Trig class and say that it's going to be due, tomorrow. Yeah. Once that's done, I click Assign to Classes. Oops, I already have one for that. I've done this before. We'll call it Phases 2. How's that? And then Assign to Classes. Cool. Now, it says I've assigned Phases 2 to my Algebra 2 Trig class so that I know it's there. It has a due date, so it'll appear right away on my students' pages if those students are signed into that particular class. Now, as a student, what I would do would be to come in here. Like I said, I'd go through the little demo. It's going to show me how this whole thing works. Click on the next button. There's a bunch of manipulators that I can show how the phases of the moon, how they're affected by the Earth's position. And then see the questions that we've created here at CK12. And as a student, once I've gone through and completed the questions, reviewed the data, there'll actually be a button up on top. Okay, there'll be a button up on top that allows me to turn it in just like there was on the practice. Let's take a look at another one here. Let's go back to CK12, and I'll show you the same option with a Plix. So again, I'm just back at the home page here. Click on Plix. Here's our individual Plix interactives. These are sort of more quick bites of the same idea as the Sims, only they're kind of smaller ideas of what these individual activities are. So this one is scientific measurement, talking about how a dartboard is related to scientific measurement, and you can see gives us a little idea of clustering here. I can assign this again to a class just like I did the other one. Same process, give it a name, choose the class, choose the due date. Once those are done, if I were to go back again to the home page, oops, and go to groups, here's my Algebra 2 trig class. There's that new assignment that I put in. I didn't actually assign the Plex, so it doesn't show up. But here's that phases of the moon. It's the most recent thing I've done. I can see it now in my assignments page. The assignments is over on the left. Here's all the assignments that I've created. It goes by default, it goes by the earliest due date, so you see the oldest assignments first. You can change that sorting up on top so that it shows the newest assignments first. So I have real numbers and number lines and phases of the moon. Those are both the things that I assigned. Now phases of the moon I gave an earlier due date, so it looks like it was created a little earlier. Once that's been assigned and my students start working on it, I can click on reports. There we go. These are all the students that are in my particular class down the left-hand side. And then across the top are all of the assignments that I've created for that class. Here's that phases 2 that I just created. You can see obviously nobody's done anything with it. Phases of the moon 1, as we discovered a minute ago, I created earlier. I had a student that already did something on that, so we can see that he's completed a portion of that assignment already, but only one of the students in this class actually did. So I go through the additional assignments I've made back through time. There's another phases of the moon. Wow, I like that one. We have systems of equations and inequalities. This was an actual student a couple years ago. He just started that topic here. He did 1 part out of 6. So I can see right away how many students have attempted something, how much progress they've made on it, and just get a quick overview of where the class is at, which is a little bit ago I mentioned that I liked making a separate course for my advanced students. I really liked that because in this case I could just glance at a specific topic and see most of the class had finished it. We were good to go, and then look at the advanced one and see how many of the sort of add-on assignments had been completed as well. Now let's take a look at a specific assignment here. We see that Ethan, for instance, had done some of this stuff. Let's see. Bob Tester, I don't know, I wanted to send something that's been worked on. There we go. We can see here that this particular assignment was started. He completed 100% of it. He didn't do any of the other ones in this section. But if I click on this one that's been started, I can get a specific response showing me how many questions he answered, how many of them were easy, how many were medium, how many were hard. Very similar to the response that we got at the end of the actual practice for the student's view. Now as a teacher, I can come in and see specifically per student what they were working on, how many questions they answered. Were they just guessing? Did I see 10 in a row that were wrong and the one that was right? Or was he actually working on it and trying to get the questions correct? So I get a good feel as a teacher for whether they really understand the concept or not.
Laramie, I'm just going to have you scroll that a little slower so they can kind of see and maybe pause for a second. So like kind of see the top for a minute and then show them kind of a couple of the questions so they can actually see that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Katie. So again, we have this specific assignment was systems of equations and inequalities. He completed the 100% of the assignment, meaning that he got the 10 in a row that he was required to get. In that 10 in a row, he got six correct in a row. He got 10 correct, sorry, not 10 in a row. It took him 9 minutes, and we can see that the system thinks he's about 60% skillful at this. In other words, if he'd come in and gotten, of the 10 he needed, 10 in a row right away without ever missing anything, this meter would be much higher. If he did 50 questions before finally getting the 10 correct, the meter would be lower. So it's the system giving us an overall view for whether it feels like he's got a good grasp on that concept. So if we scroll down just a little bit here, we can see again, he answered 10 of the 17 available questions. It starts off, like I said, a default at medium. Obviously, the system felt like he was doing reasonably well because it also gave him 5 hard questions. And it wouldn't have kicked him up into the hard questions if he wasn't doing reasonably well on the medium ones. And then we can see specifically the first question he got right. The second question he got, looks like a slow internet here, so it didn't load that math correctly. The second question he did not get correct. The third and fourth ones he answered correct. And each individual question has the level above it. So the easy one, I would have hoped he would get right. The medium ones, on average, I would hope he would get at least most of those right. And then we have some hard ones as well. The system was saying, okay, look, he's doing pretty well here. Let's kick him up into hard questions. And we can see the specific answers for the hard questions. Cool.
Great. Thanks, Laramie. So hopefully you guys, it gives you kind of a general idea of what this report looks like. So a couple of things, that time feature right there, it literally is just the time that they are open in the CK12 practice. So it's actually a great way to tell if kids are just randomly guessing. When they get 10 right out of 40 questions and they did it in less than a minute and a half, then that's just a random guessing. The system will serve up questions occasionally again if they got it incorrect, but if it's a true-false question, they'll only get it once because they get a one-shot deal on that. If there's multiple choices, they might get it a couple times, but they would never see the same question enough times to kind of track their answers and always get that piece as they work their way through. So hopefully that time feature is helpful for you guys. And then this is a class group. So there was a question about study group assignments. There are no assignments available in study groups. If you want to make assignments, you need to do those in a class group. They don't show up in a class. The Q&A component of a class group is still available there. So let's see if, I guess Laramie's pulling up a study group for us to see. So you can see there are no kind of options as you work your way from there.
There's the question and answer over here on the left, which is kind of like the chat, because right now I have it turned off, but we can turn this on in the study group. But there are no assignments, there's no reports. It's not built from the standpoint of a teacher wanting to run a class. It's built from the standpoint of a round table of students wanting to help each other out.
Thanks for showing that. One of the other pieces in here asks about kind of assigning anything within the CK12 option. So if you assign a non-practice or quiz modality, students get a complete or incomplete. They don't get anything, they don't get any percentages, they don't get any part there. They get it complete or incomplete. So if you upload a doc with a bunch of questions and you assign that to students, then the system will confirm that they accessed it, but because those questions aren't digital questions, it won't show anything beyond the fact that they accessed that. Similarly, if you want to ask questions about a sim or a Plix, those have their own built-in questions, so you could have them kind of show you their work as they're working their way through that. But they're really exploratory and not assessment-based, so they're marked as complete or incomplete in terms of that exploration.
You'll see here she's mentioning everyone the complete or incomplete. Instead of showing 100% or 80%, all I show here is a check mark. Phases of the Moon was just an interactive. It was the sim that I showed you. So once the student has completed it, we get a check that says that it's done, and it doesn't say that it's some percentage done.
Cool. And then we have a couple questions about kind of open response questions, kind of larger things. Our system accepts questions with up to 3 words in an open response. So if you're building question types, or we've built question types, they're not long free answers. We do have an open discussion question type where students could post their answers in a forum or Q&A in a class. But because our system can't monitor and read and decipher whether or not they've answered a question with, paragraphs worth of text, those aren't the type of questions that you will see in our thing. You would see kind of multiple choice options, or you'd see fill in the blank choices where they have to fill in different parts of an equation. But there's not kind of a broad, you can just type anything in as you work your way through there. And then there's this question of, are the questions the same for each student? Are they given in a different order? So if it's the adaptive practice that they're working off of, that adaptive practice is totally based on how they're doing. So students will get served up different questions. They'll get served up questions in a different order. That takes care of itself kind of in terms of doing that piece. If you make a quiz and you customize your content into a quiz, then you would, at that point in time, you'd be able to choose the option to shuffle the questions. So in that case, the students would get the same questions, but they would get them in a different order. So that's one way to kind of address that piece. And then we had a question about showing how a group of students could set up their own study groups. So maybe, Laramie, you could just go back to the groups page, and they have the same group option there. And you could just show them once again kind of how to create a new group, because I know we had a couple of questions on that.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to click the plus button here. And again, this looks exactly the same whether I'm signed in as a student or signed in as a teacher. Both options have this dashboard button up on the top. And then from the dashboard, I can click on groups, or I can specifically just click on that groups button up on top. It doesn't matter. They both go to the same page. And on that page, I have the little plus button, create a new group, create it as a study group. We like to discuss blogs, and then create a group. And then any one of the students can do that. Once that student has done it, they'll go into that study group, and right away they'll see the options for sharing access to that group for other students. They can send this email, just click on the email instructions button and type in the email for the other students if they have it. They can share the group link. They don't have to have an email for other students. If they want to just share the group link, they can get the code and tell the other students what the code for their particular group is right here. Or if you want to write something like this up on the board, then all the students that are going to join the study group can grab that code. They can go to their own groups page, the same plus button, and instead of create a group, they're going to join a group. And they just paste that little code in or type it in, click join group. I'm already in that group, but that's all it takes to join it. It's really easy. Students can definitely do it individually, and I had students that did.
Awesome. Thanks, Laramie. I think with that, we're still getting questions, and feel free to keep them coming in. So I'm going to steal the screen back for some wrap up kind of here, and then we'll go back and continue to answer questions. So one of the questions we got a minute ago kind of had to do with integrated learning management systems. And our tools and app page includes that information as well as our apps. So we had talked about our practice app today to allow students to kind of work off of that. So you'll see that, as well as options to access our Flexbooks and Sims offline. So check out that page. You can go to that URL or the bottom of our pages and click on the footer that says tools and apps. Similarly, these are some of the learning management systems, Edmodo, Google Classroom, Schoology, and Canvas in particular, that either have or will shortly have grade passback. So in that case, you would see kind of that percentage, that 100% if they got it correct, or a percent out of the total questions for a quiz, or complete or incomplete for assignments that you make within those areas. I know Edmodo is practice and quizzes only, and the other ones have a little bit more variety in terms of what you can assign. If you're using any of these or Blackboard, join us for Learning Management Systems on Monday, and we'll go into them in more depth. For any class you take with us this summer, we always have an assignment. So our groups and practice assignment is tinyurl.com CEP17 GP for Groups and Practice 101. So check that out. There's a couple different areas to cover, and that will hopefully give you that experience playing with this, so that you can answer questions or ask questions of us as you work your way through. You can find that assignment. We'll send it out tomorrow, but you can find it in the meantime at Certified 2017, our program page, as well as archived recordings and everything else that you need for here. And then these are some of the sessions I had talked about, that customizing practice, using practice in groups with students, which is also tomorrow, and then learning management systems on Monday. So tomorrow's a ton more practice options, so join us for those if you have more questions as well. And you can register for those at Jumpstart, so the ck12.org/jumpstart. And then this is the same feedback form for every session, so if you have feedback for us, please feel free to give it to us, and we'll continue to kind of improve these sessions as we go through. So I think with that, it's been an hour, so I'm going to say thank you at this time. We are going to stay on and go through any other questions. So we will continue to address those as we go through, but if you guys are done with your questions for today and you want to get started on that assignment or do something else, you're more than welcome to sign off at this time. And we hope to see you again in the future. So I think with that, hopefully that integrated learning management system piece I addressed, so we can kind of see that piece. And then we have some of the questions on the assignment. Maybe let me share let me go out of this and share kind of our program page. So I'm going to pull up that screen, and that will help me show. So if you're looking for our program page, you can go down here to the Certified Educator Program. You will get that assignment emailed 24 hours from now once we get all the video footage and everything posted. But in the meantime, you can scroll down to our session information. This is Groups in Practice 101. And within that topic, right below the times it's offered in the resources, you'll see our assignment. So you can click directly on there to access the assignment if you're trying to do that piece. So hopefully that addresses that. And then questions about kind of dealing with students and dealing with questions. You can turn Q&A off if you're having issues, if you don't want students to post information there. I would generally say kind of the same thing goes for using our social components as they are for any components via email, via social options within your school, via texting. You are still going to have to kind of be that teacher and monitor those pieces within your groups, and that if you have specific questions or kind of general questions for the community as a whole on ways teachers have addressed some of those issues, then I highly recommend you go to our cafe forum, which you can find under the cafe piece here. And Jumpstart for Educators, this is our forum that has teachers that joined us last summer and this summer, and you can kind of see some different options as you work your way through. So if you have questions and you're looking for kind of feedback from the community, you can see here that someone posted, how many of you have written your own Flexbook? That's a great question, and hopefully you can post your own questions there and get feedback from how others have addressed different situations. So I think we addressed the questions in Q&A. I'll give you guys another minute to post any other ones. But I would recommend, let me scroll down to here, going back to this. If you want to register for any of the upcoming ones, you're going to want to go into this individual webinar piece. If you've already registered for the program, you can just give us your email again, and you don't have to fill out like kind of all of the information as you go to register. It doesn't mean you're not registered, but feel free to select any time. If you want to join us this afternoon for Flexbooks 101, you can click on that and join that there. So all sorts of options as you work your way through. And then I know someone said that they couldn't make it to something, so let me actually go back to that page. Below all of our session descriptions, you'll see under archived webinars the video recordings. So if you missed our intro and you need to count that as your one kind of demo video session, then by all means go ahead and check out one of those recordings. You can pick any one you want and do the matching assignment, and then you can kind of count that towards your program. And yeah, in terms of watching the webinar live, once you log into Zoom, it actually tracks the amount of time that you were logged in, because you all got kind of a unique link to that program. So we'll track that and go from there. So hopefully that answers some program questions. You can always email Jumpstart if you have other program questions. And we have some kind of general things on, is there a clicker type option for questions? There is no like polling type question or kind of some of those everyone reports and you show it and display it on the class within our system at this time. And kind of that's one of those things that I would recommend. If you're looking for something like that, continue to email us and ask us for it, and we'll consider it as we develop our site further. But at this time, there's not one there. And then if you're looking for a group, yeah, I would recommend making, I don't know if there's one comment in there that says a suggestion for a group could be an enrichment group. I don't know if you're talking about our forums, in which case, if you are, please email us with recommendations. If you're talking about groups within your own thing, we highly encourage you to make different groups to enrich or differentiate based on student learning needs and styles. So I think with that, we're gonna log out here. You guys can always email us with more questions, join us this afternoon or later in this program. And I wanna thank Laramie for coming in and demoing our content today.
Thank you, Katie. Nice to talk to everyone.
Okay, have a great day. Thanks so much.